At the end of our last session, I made a statement that when we choose to treat our parents with respect, despite the pain that we may have experienced from them in our growing up years, we correct something within ourselves and we become the conscious authors of our own healing story. That's very important that when you go through life, we realize that the injuries, the spiritual injuries, the injuries to our souls that we receive can last a lifetime and actually mess up our lives. And we need to seek help. We also need to remember that when we are injured, we will injure those that we are raising. So we need to be careful in raising a generation that honors God, passing on batons that are not thorny, so to speak. When we ignore the command to honor father and mother, and if we choose instead to scorn them, friends, we go through life like one who is blind. We go through lives like one whose eyes have been plucked out by the ravens of the sky. We go through life as one whose eyes have been eaten by young eagles. We had referred to this scripture earlier in Proverbs 20:20 and Proverbs 30:17. You know what happens? Opportunities come our way, but we miss them. J.B. Phillips, who was a translator of the J.B. Phillips Bible, the New Testament, says this: if words are to enter men's minds and bear fruit, they must be the right words, and they must be shaped cunningly to pass men's defenses and explode silently and effectually within their minds. What is J.B. Phillips talking about? People have an emotional armor around them. And many times when you begin to speak, the armor comes up and it blocks what you are saying to them. So if our words are to enter men's minds, and if our words are to bear fruit in their hearts and in their lives, they must be the right words. And these words must be shaped cunningly to pass through the emotional armor, to pass through men's defenses. In raising children, we don't just speak what's on our heart and mind all the time. We have to measure what we say to allow it to pass through the defenses of our children and be able to explode inside our child and bring about the fruit that we are desiring. Friends, for us to do this, we need to have renewed thinking. The renewal of our thinking is a process that leads to the renewal of our minds. The renewed minds renews our emotions, and renewed emotions in turn renew our actions. Our words and our actions are the means through which other people, including our children, experience us. And as a man thinks in his heart, the Bible says, so is he. And out of the abundance of the heart, the scripture says, the mouth speaks. So this renewed thinking process is impossible unless we discover and embrace transforming truth from the scriptures. Truth that penetrates the division of soul and spirit. Truth that goes to bone and marrow. Truth that is able to discern the thoughts and intentions of the heart. Proverbs 17 verse 6 says, grandchildren are the crown of old men, and the glory of sons is their fathers. Did you hear that? The glory of sons is their fathers. What does glory mean? It means magnificence. It means grandeur. It means beauty. This is how God designed it, that the glory of sons is their fathers. Fathers give their sons identity. Sons want to be just like their fathers, unless, of course, their fathers let them down. They don't want to be like their fathers. Let us look at the relationship between Christ and his Father, because we can learn a lot from that relationship and use it in our own parenting to build up our own children. In John chapter 5 and verse 19, Jesus was speaking to his disciples and he gave them this answer: very truly I tell you, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can only do what what he sees his Father doing. Because whatever the Father does, the Son also does. Did you hear that? Whatever the Father does, the Son also does. The Son, that is Christ, follows the actions of his Father. That is also very true in parenting. Children, and especially boys, just want to be like their fathers. Girls also, but mostly boys, they want to follow their fathers. Listen again as we look at John chapter 8 and verse 38. Christ says, I'm telling you what I have seen in my Father's presence. I am telling you. In other words, the Son's speech is highly influenced by what he has seen in the Father. I am telling you what I have seen. When the Son spends time in his Father's presence and sees his Father doing certain things, he begins to speak about them. John 8:28 in the NIV says, when you have lifted up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am he, and that I do nothing on my own, but speak just what the Father has taught me. See, different words are being used here. What I have seen, what I have been taught. Christ told them who he was, but they refused to believe. And he tells them, guys, when you lift up the Son of Man, in other words, when you crucify me, then you will know that what I'm speaking about is not of my own, but I speak just what the Father has taught me. So here we have Jesus teaching by what he was taught by the Father. So in other words, Jesus' speech is influenced by what he learned. We saw that Jesus taught what he saw from his Father. He learned by observation. We see that Jesus did what he saw his Father doing. He learned by imitation. And we see that Jesus spent time in the presence of his Father. Now let us see how the Father brags on Jesus publicly and privately. At baptism, in Matthew chapter 3, verse 16 and 17, the scripture says, as soon as Jesus was baptized, he went up out of the water, and at that moment, heaven was opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting on him. And a voice from heaven said, this is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. This voice was not just coming in to affirm Jesus. Yes, it did affirm him, but it came as a public declaration. God the Father is bragging on his Son in public. But let's also look at how God speaks to his Son in private. At the Transfiguration, we only had 3 disciples with Christ. In Luke 9:35, the scripture says, a voice came from the cloud saying, this is my Son, whom I have chosen. Listen to him. And who was the audience? Peter, James, and John. Did God have to say that? He didn't have to, but he chose to. He is asking the private audience to listen to his Son. He's telling the public audience that he's pleased with his Son. What is the Father effectively saying to Jesus? He's telling the whole world and the closest friends of Christ that I love my Son, I chose my Son, I'm proud of my Son, and my Son knows what he's doing. Therefore, listen to him. Friends, in private and in public, there are 3 things sons need to hear from their fathers over a lifetime. Son, I love you. Son, I'm proud of you. Son, you're good at, and mention what he is good at. Keep affirming your sons in these words. Keep affirming your sons by telling them how much you love them, how much you're proud of them, and what they are good at. Your son may not be good at everything. Nobody ever is. But brag on him in the one thing he's good at. See his self-esteem begin to blossom. See him gain credence in front of his friends, and see him attempt to work on areas where he would be normally struggling just because you affirmed him.